I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. We have a great show for you tonight. We'll hear more comments from Multnomah County Commissioner Sharon Myron. She's talking about the problems behind the scenes when it comes to working on the homeless issue. We'll also hear about a plan to tackle gun violence near 3 high schools. And we're not going to hear about a proposed capital gains tax for Multnomah County that we promised you yesterday. Sorry. Don't worry, though. We'll cover it with our usual in-depth fashion tomorrow. In the meantime, the Oregon Senate ground to a halt for a second day in a row today after another Republican walkout, and that is our big story tonight. Democracy is sometimes a messy business. We're seeing that in Salem right now as the Oregon Senate is at a standstill, brought to an abrupt halt by Republicans who walked out. Only 2 Republicans showed up today, giving the Senate 18 members. That's 2 short of the 20 they need for a quorum. And without a quorum, they can't legally do business. Here's what it was like in Salem this morning.
The clerk will please call the roll.
Thatcher, Weber, absent, Bonham, Boquist, Finley, Hayden, Linthicum, 18 ayes.
The call is terminated. The quorum is not present.
So that was that. Remember the good old days when the legislature started way back on January 17th? They promised what seemed like a love fest between Democrats and Republicans. Well, that's over. The Senate President, Democrat Rob Wagner, and the Minority Leader, Republican Tim Knopp, used to meet every week. Turns out that stopped a month ago.
It's disappointing to me that we haven't had the opportunity, or we haven't been afforded the opportunity to sit down in advance of some of these, parliamentary tricks that we're seeing to actually talk about substantive issues. We started this legislative session by co-authoring several pieces of legislation. Senate Bill 2, Senate Bill 3, we've co-carried bills together. But again, I think what you've seen is that as the House has started to take up fundamental freedoms around reproductive health, those conversations have actually not occurred in the last couple weeks. Senator Knopp has actually canceled those meetings, starting with actually the morning of our regular meeting. It was interesting because there was a cancellation of that, and then it was clear that they went out and then published a press release right after that. So you can see that, as Senator Lieber said, this is part of a playbook that we've had, and it's just another attempt to sort of try to distract people from the real issue here, and that is after Dobbs, when you see what's happening in this country, Oregonians want to protect reproductive health, and that's what we came here to do.
Now, for his part, Senator Knopp argued that no. The issue forcing the walkout is not about reproductive rights. It's about following the rules.
We're not walking out just for those bills. We're pressing pause on this session because almost every single bill has a problem. As I mentioned, in the last 2 days where we had bills on the floor, only one passed with the 64 on that scale. Only one. And so it's important to us that if we're going to have laws, that we should obey those laws. If we have Senate rule, and the courts have said many times Senate rule can trump statute, especially as it relates to process. And so if we're going to have rules that have been adopted, we should follow those rules.
Now, when he says scale, he's talking about a readability scale. Now, I know that you do like deep dives on things like this, so we are going to dive deep. Here's an explanation on the rule that Knopp says he's concerned about. Republicans say the bill summary for that contentious abortion bill, for example, violates Senate rules, state laws, and the state constitution because it's not written simply enough for all Oregonians to understand. Here's the stipulation when it comes to the bill summary language. The state constitution section they refer to is Article 4, Section 21. It says, acts to be plainly worded. Every act and joint resolution shall be plainly worded, avoiding as far as practical the use of technical terms. When it comes to the Senate rule book, they're focused on Rule 13.02, which has 5 different parts, but the GOP is focused on the 5th part. It reads, All summaries must comply with ORS 171.134. And here's what that state law says. By the way, it was passed back in 1979. The title is Readability Test for Legislative Digest and Summaries. Any measure digest or measure summary prepared by the Legislative Assembly shall be written in a manner that results in a score of at least 60 on the Flesch readability test or meets an equivalent standard of a comparable test. Now, I don't know about you, but I'd never heard of such a thing. But it's real. And the readability test measures how difficult it is to understand the language and the kind of writing. So the higher the score, the more understandable a text is. The lower the score, the harder it is to understand. So that 60 score that the state law mandates, that's about around the 8th grade reading level. So I hadn't heard of that bill summary issue. I figured let's pull up the software and give it a try. Right now we're looking at House Bill 2002. I'm going to copy the summary here, put it into the Flesch Kincaid calculator, let it calculate the ease of reading. Ooh, look at that. It's 15.4. That's not great. It's supposed to be 60 or above. It tells us you'd need to be a college graduate or above to be able to understand this. And then we'll go to the next one, Senate Bill 4. This was the big one on the semiconductors. Let's copy this, put it into the readability calculator. See how they like this one. Ooh, also not great, 24.1. Again, it's supposed to be a 60. This shows you'd need, again, to be a college graduate to understand it. Very difficult. Here's a bill that both sides really like. This is allowing self-service for gas. Let me capture this. We'll copy it over, put it in the calculator. See how this works. It's really short. Oh, that's one of the worst scores we've had so far, 4.1. It's supposed to be a 60, not a 4.1. That shows really hard to read, really hard to understand. And here's a bill that Senator Knopp sponsored that prohibited the state from paying out-of-state employees to come back to work in Oregon. Let's put that in, see how that fares. We'll calculate that. Oh, that's the worst reading score of all of the 4 that we picked, 3.8 here. And again, it's supposed to be a 60. Also being scored very difficult to read. So that's kind of an eye-opener, I think. The Republicans today asked a judge to stop the legislature, stop it completely, because of the reading scores on those summaries and others, and he said, no, not going to do that. When it comes to walkouts, things have changed in Oregon, by the way. Last year, voters approved by a 2-to-1 margin a change in the state constitution. It now bans a lawmaker with 10 or more unexcused absences during any legislative session from holding that office following the end of their current term. So you miss 10, you can't come back until you sit out a term. So if I'm the Republican leader, I'm thinking about how many people do I have? So 12 Republicans, 1 independent. And I'm also thinking about how many days in a row can they miss? And do they have to miss all those days in a row? Or can we have some people show up and still deny them a quorum? They need 20. We can give them some. We can give them 3 people every day and still not get to that 20. Okay, so let's draw this out and see how far we can drag it out. We're going to use letters for people. Okay, so there's 13. So on this first day, we'll use G for people who have to go and S for everybody else who skips. Go, go, go. So these are the people who are going to skip. Everybody else gets to skip this day. But then on the next day, these 3 have to go and everybody else gets to skip. So skip, skip, skip. Next day, these 3 go. About every 4th day, they have to show up. Go, go, go. Okay, let's see how far we are now. So this guy goes, then the rest can skip. So we can go 1 more row. If these 3 go here, go. If they started today, because yesterday a lot of people had excused absences because the Democrats didn't see this coming. So if we just start with a blank slate today, they could go 11 more days and only have some of their members with 8 unexcused absences, assuming they don't have any already, and about half of them would have 9. So they'd be in danger. You don't want 10. But they could drag this out another 11 days. 11 days. You like my board? Pretty fancy, huh? Now, to counter the Republicans, the Senate president has said, okay, you want to play hardball? Guess what? We're going to meet every day. That includes Saturday and Sunday. So, if they do that, the Republicans will have to cave probably, by my recollection, around the 14th, so Mother's Day, or they're going to start losing members to that 10-day rule. So, here's what we've learned here. First, yes, there is a rule about the summaries and they have to be readable, and no one follows that. Second, the walkout is not about the rule, it's about the bills. Third, Republicans have no other tools, so they're using the walkout. 3, 4, finally, they have to be careful because if they miss 10 days without permission, they're out at the end of their term. Interesting stuff, don't you think? Here's my opinion on this. First, to claim the walkout is over the wording of a summary for proposed laws is clearly a bunch of baloney. There are problems with the summaries, we showed you that. But if Senator Knopp was truly disturbed by this down to his core, he would have made sure that the bill he sponsored was easily readable and followed that rule. Instead, it got the worst score of the 4 bills that we checked. So let's stop pretending it's about the bill summaries, because it's not. This is about Republicans wanting to block the bill that clarifies the rights of women to get abortions and other care in Oregon and makes insurance companies pay for gender-affirming care. It's also about a gun control bill that would make it illegal for anyone under 21 to buy a gun in Oregon, with some exceptions for shotguns or rifles for hunting. Those under that age who already have a gun would be exempt. The bill would also outlaw so-called ghost guns, which are untraceable. So that's what this is really about. The Republicans don't like those bills. They don't have the votes to stop it either. So should they be walking out? Well, they'll tell you, as they've told me over the years, that their job is to represent their voters and the best interests of the state in the very best way they can. Right now, they believe their only tool left is to walk out. Okay, I respect that, even without talking about the merits of the bill that they're against. And yes, the Democrats have used walkouts themselves, even before the Republicans in Oregon history. But since voters passed the constitutional change last year, Republicans are on the clock. They've made their statement now. If that was their point, it is time to get back to legislating. What are you thinking about all this? Send an email, will you? The address is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail. Our phone number is 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing from you. Coming up next on The Story, the city of Portland is planning to spend more than $1 million to combat youth gun violence, and they're doing it through outreach at 3 Eastside high schools. Which schools were chosen, the reason why, and we'll hear from a community group hoping to lead the charge to make our streets a bit safer when The Story returns. In its fight against gun violence, the city of Portland is asking community organizations to work with teenagers at 3 East Side high schools. The city plans to spend $1.5 million on what it calls street-level outreach for high-risk youth. Evan Watson joins us now. And Evan, which high schools specifically and why these?
Yeah, they're looking at McDaniel High School, Parkrose High School, and David Douglas High School. Now, the city says that those 3 high schools are in the middle of a hub of area with high incidence of gun violence. However, they're not the only high schools that pop up on the map and the data that the city's using.
You'll hear gunshots, like, it's not foreign to us. So I think it's good that people are focusing in on like areas like this.
Students like Oliver Zimber are the focus. Portland is reviewing proposals from 7 community organizations, groups that say they can work with young people who are at risk of becoming victims or perpetrators of gun violence.
Oh yeah, when I seen the RFP, I read it, I was like, this is exactly what we do.
Lionel Irving and his organization Love is Stronger applied. Irving says he believes in this plan.
Why not, put a hub around the schools and then let that vibration out to the community that's already struggling already.
Portland leaders subscribe to a cure violence model, believing that gun violence is a public health issue, an infectious condition that's both treatable and preventable. But what stands out about this treatment plan are the details. This street-level outreach is centered on 3 East Side schools, Parkrose High School and McDaniel High School in Northeast Portland, and David Douglas High School in Southeast Portland.
Why those 3 schools as an emphasis?
The students within those high schools are just like any other student in the city of Portland. It's just where high incidence of gun violence is occurring.
Sierra Ellis is the interim manager for Portland's Office of Violence Prevention. The OVP shared a map of shooting clusters, last updated in August, which shows pockets of shootings on the east side. The 3 high schools are right in the middle of some concerning areas. But the data doesn't show that students were the problem.
So then why focus on youth outreach and young adult outreach in this program?
Getting to individuals early, intervening in before they pick up a gun, before they shoot someone, before they become a victim of gun violence is important. It changes the trajectory of your life.
Portland plans to give out more than $1.5 million to 1 or 2 organizations for this gun violence prevention and outreach work over the next 2 years.
We're going to support whoever gets it.
Irving says whichever organization is picked can't do this alone. The community needs to get more involved. But for him, this concept is promising.
Gun violence is getting younger and younger. And in my mind, these are just geographical areas where we know students are going to be. And so if we know students are going to be here, we need to have, positive influences around to make sure that they got resources to talk to.
That was Evan Watson reporting. Still to come on the story, Multnomah County Commissioner Sharon Myron told us on yesterday's show that there's no plan when it comes to the homeless crisis on our streets. We've got part 2 of my interview with Myron up next, with more on how technology should be utilized to help people on the streets. Plus, we'll share some of your thoughts on the commissioner's revelations when the story returns.
Straight ahead at 6:30, an emotional day in court with a teenage father charged with the murder of his young son. What we're learning about the case. Plus, day 2 of the Republican walkout in the Oregon Senate, why Democrats are accusing their colleagues of stall tactics. And Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler releases his proposed $7.1 billion budget, his funding priorities for the upcoming fiscal year. That's next at 6:30.
Back to our conversation with Multnomah County Commissioner Sharon Myron. Yesterday, she explained that there's really no overall plan for addressing homelessness in the county and no accountability either. If you missed that, you can catch the interview on our streaming app on Roku and Amazon Fire called KGW Plus, or watch anytime on the KGW YouTube channel. Just scroll down to the story. And if the Joint Office of Homeless Services gets the money they want in this next budget cycle, we will have spent in Multnomah County $1 billion on homelessness in 7 years. In Multnomah County alone, $1 billion. That's a lot of money. Tonight we'll cover one more topic with Myron: technology. The commissioner is a medical doctor and also has a law degree and an economics degree. She's frustrated by the lack of coordination and the lack of data to address the homeless issue. Without that, she says, the county is tracking numbers that are sometimes meaningless.
One of the things that I find fascinating, and one of the things I want to call out what Chair Vega Peterson is doing that the previous chair just did not do, is we have a data systems task force that is trying to break through and say, what do we need? What are we measuring? What does it mean? How is this meaningful to real people instead of something HUD wants to see that means nothing in the real world? So I'm on that data systems task force, and so I want to commend that. I also have to say I find things that are concerning. So one of the biggest things that I've seen touted by the county has been the number of housing placements we have. That's the big thing on the supportive housing services measure and a lot of what we do. So, okay, we get people placed. That's what all the nonprofits are trying to do. And then we have good follow-up information, or some follow-up information, on 28% of those people who are placed.
That's all?
That's my understanding. Again, welcome anyone to come forward and prove me wrong. I would love that. But this is what I understand, and that is shocking to me.
Yeah, I think that'd be shocking to a lot of people.
Yeah.
All that money's going out, no idea whether it made a difference or.
Yeah. And if the goal for our nonprofits, if we say what we're kind of grading you on, is how many people you place. You have to place people in housing, then that becomes the focus rather than, okay, what services do they need? Are they able to be placed right now in a place we reasonably have? And so what's actually happening, I've heard this from some nonprofit providers, is people get placed and they're not ready to be placed, or they don't have the services they need because they're next on the list. And you just have to go down this list. And I've heard of apartments being burned, or plumbing that's been clogged up that ruins plumbing for an entire building. Or these are anecdotes that I am quite certain have happened. They end up costing money to fix. They end up making our insurance costs higher. And this is a real concern right now, the acuity and what's happening there.
Wow. Because the metric is how many did you place?
How many did you place?
So people are placed as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and then they may fall out of housing the next day, but it's well, they were placed.
Yeah.
So.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. A little grumbling there. Again, if you missed yesterday's segment with Myron, go back and check it out. It was really fascinating. It's rare to hear this level of detail from an insider. It's quite illuminating and infuriating at the same time. On that note, we asked for your thoughts about my sit down with the commissioner and the revelations that some suspected but really had not heard directly from a county or city leader until now. Barb wrote to us to say last night the story was mind-blowing. Nearly $1 billion invested in addressing people experiencing homelessness in Portland and Multnomah County, and the results are waiting for a response that will have an equal measure of sadness, frustration, and cynicism. A broken system and no accountability. Egregious, negligent, irresponsible. We also got quite a voicemail from a viewer named Gwyn, who was recently homeless herself.
I've been through the homeless system, and I've seen it in action with the service providers, with the JOHS, with all of them, with the health care. everything. And I've recently been housed, and there needs to be oversight. There is no oversight. Each service provider is working pretty much independently, getting funding. There's so much funding that's going to waste. And it took me 8 months in shelter, 6 months in congregated, 2 months in a motel shelter to get housed.
There it is from the front lines. Thanks for calling in, Gwen. Some of you offered solutions of your own. A former city councilor in Salem says there needs to be a homeless czar to help bridge the gap between the agencies. That czar can coordinate all of the different ecosystems that Commissioner Myron discussed yesterday. By the way, we want to end this segment with a nice message we got from Victoria, who is appreciative of the work that we do here on The Story.
Mr. Doris, thank you so very much. Your reporting is honest and enlightening, and we need that so desperately here in Multnomah County. I am a resident of Multnomah County, and I can't tell you how important this is. We have information now so that we can go to the county meetings, and we can speak to you and leave messages. Sometimes I think I'm just one person, but I'll be there. I'm terrified at what's happening to our beautiful country and our town. To watch you and your truthful reporting is so refreshing and very hopeful.
Thank you, Victoria. There's a big team of us here at KGW. We appreciate you and everyone watching. Thanks very much for your message. If you have any thoughts about our show or what Commissioner Myron had to say in today's segment, you know the drill. Email us. The address is thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. And that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, the story, our collective story, well, that never ends. I'll see you tomorrow. We'll bring you that capital gains tax story, by the way. In the meantime, stick around for the news at 6:30. See you tomorrow.